you may well be listening to this back afterwards, which isn't in February, but we're recording it on the 25th of February. We don't often tell people what day we're recording on, so but we are going live out onto YouTube. If you are joining us, thank you for being part of this. Thank you for joining us. And if you have got any questions, you are absolutely welcome to in the chat there on YouTube. So we have got some guests in the studio, and we're going to get them to introduce themselves and tell us who they're representing and what they do. But the focus of today's webinar is looking at the future of education, particularly around the roles of unions and professional organisations in education. And there's a whole host of representatives from different organisations, and we are going to be joined by another one, a person who has just been slightly delayed but will be coming on to us. So the last session was about the future of curriculum and assessment, so that was lots of fun in there, and that'll probably come up in terms of some of the conversations that will sit in what we do today. But shall we ask the people to our guests to introduce themselves? And I think it would only be right for us to ask the person who came in first to get asked to introduce themselves first, and then we'll go from Aimee to Matt to Jack, and then Joe, when he comes in, will be able to introduce himself as well. So Aimee, could you just tell us who you are and your role in education?
Sure. So, hi everyone. My name's Aimee Tinkler, and I am a primary teacher by trade. My kind of affiliation today is that I've got the very grand title of President of the Chartered College. I'm not really, I do reflect on why it's called a president. It basically means chair of the board, I think. But I've been involved with the Chartered College for 10 years, actually, almost 10 years. In January, since its very first inception, when it was just an idea right at the beginning. At that time, I was since then, my career's moved on, but also I've moved on with my work with the Chartered College. So I've been involved with them for a long time from the beginning. It's work that I really passionately believe in, and it's making a great difference across the profession. So yeah, I'm really grateful to be here with you guys today. So thank you for having me.
Amazing. Thank you, Aimee. And I know that many of the people who are listening or watching this back later as well will love the work that the Chartered College are doing, especially to make sure that teachers are represented as professionals and seen as the I know I've said that I'm going to say the word professional again, but to see themselves in that and be seen in that professional setting. So thank you for the work that you're doing there, and I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts in that space. Next up, Matt.
Hello, I'm Matt Carpenter. I'm the CEO of 7 Academies Educational Trust. I'm a secondary science teacher by background. I've done leadership roles across the whole of the West Midlands. I was a head for 6 years, I think, before moving to become CEO. I'm also the co-chair of ASCL's Neuro-Inclusive Leadership Community. So I'm here really to express my own views, but obviously I will be plugging ASCL at every opportunity that I can, and likewise. I'm pleased to be here. I will be smiling. It's already been pointed out I'm the only one wearing a tie, so Steve's already made me feel a little bit like an outsider. So thanks for that wonderful start, guys. Steve.
Well, let's be absolutely honest that usually me in a hoodie and a hat are the outsiders in education. So you're the neuronormative person in education generally, right, with a shirt and a tie on. I'm joking.
Thank you.
But thanks for joining us, Matt. And last but not least, before Joe joins us in a moment, is Jack Churchill. Jack Churchill OBE as well. Might I also add? I made sure that I put that on some of the information, but he hasn't put it on his name title because you're just Jack, aren't you, Jack? Tell us a little bit about you and your role, please.
Yeah, thanks, Ben, and thanks for including me today. I would start by saying I'm dyslexic. I have an assistive technology company called Scanning Pens, which has created reading pens for supporting people in schools, in classrooms, and for exams. And I'm also the chair of the British Assistive Technology Association, which is quite a long sounding name, but we call it BATA, and it's a not-for-profit and membership organisation which has more than 90 members from across the UK. BATA is a sector body that exists to ensure the voices, that care about assistive tech are heard, from disabled advocates to the AT industry. So yeah, I'm very proud to be the chair of BATA, which I became a year ago, and we were very involved with BET, so I know you were very involved with that as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Jack. When you first started talking, I think, I'm sure I've met Jack. I'm sure I'd met Jack a long time ago. I had Jack. I was on a Google stand many, I think this was pre-COVID, and I was demonstrating scanning pens all the way back at BET. So, you know, it's come full circle. So I was like, maybe it's just my old age. I was like, maybe I'd met Jack yesterday and completely forgot, as a dad and a man that's past 40. I think what's true in any professional organisation or any union, often what people miss is they have the numbers that they represent in terms of the key element and the key responsibility of them as a stakeholder in the discussions. I think this has been great to do it as webinar too, to then think, you know what does it do? And I think the first question that we'll pose is, what role should unions and professional organisations, and Matt, I know you're probably going to go, I would represent it from if I was a member, and I am a member rather than the organisation. So we'll start with you in a second. And what role should they play then in shaping the future of education, other than simply just responding to policy that's driven? Maybe flip it and think, actually, how can they lead policy change rather than just be a response to it? Matt, if you want to come in, if that's okay, and then I'll direct some questions to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first point to make really is about unions' influence over policy and their capacity to influence policy. I think trade unions are in a relatively weak position. There's no collective bargaining at a national level. It was taken away in 1987. In 2003, the workforce reform, I don't know if I'm a bit of a geek when it comes to education. I probably played that card relatively early on. But 2003, the NUT didn't engage in the workload reforms that were announced at that point, weakening the collective position of the trade unions. And I think the unions should play a really, really significant role in shaping policy and having that really constructive relationship with government, where policy is built around the needs of their members. I would say with a real push for collective responsibility for the children in schools, and I think that's often missed when we talk about trade unions, is, you know, the teachers will be advocating for the children in their classrooms. So yeah, I think there's a real need for a much more constructive and collaborative relationship to facilitate good conversation around the professional conditions that teachers are working in and the expectations of teachers. But I don't know if the unions are in that position at the moment to be able to have that conversation. I know they have a lot of influence and in the discussions that they have, but whether those discussions lead to meaningful change, I'm not sure. And I think probably the reforms we saw in 2010, the Gove era, they were hammered through because of a weak position on unions, I think.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting thing in terms of that groundswell, that opportunity, that working collectively and collaboratively, rather than in silos and working for just the people they represent. If they represent the whole body and then the whole of the learner body that all of those people support, the strength of number massively actually increases, rather than divide and conquer, I guess, in terms of.
Yeah, and I think probably on that point, Steve, is the number of teaching unions doesn't necessarily help that. You know, there's two quite big teaching unions, there's two quite big leadership unions, and so there is an inherent division there, and they don't always align. When I've worked with them in my role as CEO, and their internal machinery is so different, it can lead to quite big attitudinal differences, but not because they've got a particular perception of something, it's just they work in such a different way. So I think one of the unions isn't brilliant at working with trusts. They just don't know how to do that yet, and we're quite a long time into that trust level reform. So yeah.
Thanks, Matt. Aimee, any thoughts from yourself on this in regards to your role as a day-to-day or as president? Such an important role, as president.
It sounds important, doesn't it?
Wow.
I try to avoid the title. My day-to-day role is I'm Director of Education across a trust, so I feel very much on the ground. And I feel like the work the Chartered College does, particularly around this idea of raising the status, we've already mentioned it today already, raising the status of the profession so that, you know, we are super proud to be teachers. I use this analogy a lot. If anyone's heard me speak about this before, especially to student teachers, all my family are accountants. And when they get their chartered accountant thing, it's a big deal. Like, great. It's great. And teachers don't have that thing. Well, we do now, but we didn't before the Chartered College. You know, we should be super proud of the profession and what we do. And I think that the space that the Chartered College sits is around this kind of knowledge. Teachers are knowledgeable. They are doing the job. They know what it's like. We want to be kind of contributors to policy rather than just the kind of receivers of it, because we are the ones who are dealing with it every day. So I think it's pretty exciting, the work that the Chartered College are doing, and they sit in a slightly different place alongside unions, I think. But for me, it's all about, like, how can we make the whole profession feel like we are, you know, respected, and, you know, we all know we have good ideas, but we are a powerful, respected profession that policymakers should listen to, and I do think they do and are. At the moment. So I think it's pretty positive where we are right now.
It's a really interesting thing in terms of, and I don't know whether that's England or UK specific. I've been looking, if anybody else has, to spend some time in the Nordics, look at their education system and how the role of an educator and people who work in education, those core professionals that aren't actually in the classroom, the way that they are put on a pedestal in relying to doctors and many other professions, accountants, is really high. And I just don't know whether that's always or been a thing so much in England, and also definitely has taken a downgrade and a downturn since COVID and some of the reputational stuff and some of the bad press that educators got. Jack, in terms of your lens and your view, what do you think in regards to that drive and the shaping of the future education rather than just responding to it?
Yeah, no, I think it's really important that organisations like ourselves and unions, unions associations, we need to have a seat at the table early on. We need to be able to engage with policymakers, and certainly we've noticed in the last year or so that changes have been happening in our sector around assistive technology, and we haven't always been engaged with. And we think that, as a representative group who know a lot about our sector, that if we had been engaged early on, we could have helped government to refine and do things a bit better. So, and if you can be involved early on rather than later on when people get upset or find things hard, it's much easier for everyone to be positive and push forward in a similar kind of direction, even if there are different angles from the different stakeholders.
And Ben, you know me. We've got a million questions to ask by stage, and if I carry on asking these questions and prompting and probing and keep going, why, we're probably going to get through two. But I want to just ask that question back to you then, Jack, and maybe if anybody else has got an opinion of why do we feel that? Do we feel that actually decisions and change is easier without consulting and engaging all stakeholders, and processes go through quicker? What? That's just my thought straight away. But why do we think that they haven't engaged with the majority stakeholders until post change, or until the gun's gone off?
Yeah, I just wonder whether perhaps with new governments they're trying to make a lot of change happen quite quickly, and maybe it's hard for them to engage with all the different groups, as it were. But I definitely think they need to try and take us with them. We are part of the story, and we are all I guess voters at the end of the day and involved in the direction of travel, and they should take us with us and not leave us behind.
I think for sure every successive government has tried to do what they think is the right thing, right? I feel like the way to find out what the right thing is to talk to the people who are doing the job, and they probably have a better view of what would be a good answer to some of the really, really complex and difficult things that we are dealing with right now across the profession. And yeah, I guess that you're right. Politically, there's also always some kind of sway in one direction or another, but it's that idea of we're a knowledgeable profession. Ask us, and that feels like it's happened more, certainly in my career, more than it ever has recently. I feel fully hopeful about what the future might hold.
I do think that I agree with what everyone said. I do think government's quite centralised now. Everything's pulled quite tight centrally, and so that inherently kind of leans to not engaging stakeholders. I think you'd have to work quite, there is hard work, but I do agree with Aimee that things are a lot more positive and reflective of the current reality of what it's like in our schools at the moment. There's clearly more conversations happening with school leaders than there were previously in the way that policy is designed. You can see that in the recent announcement. I think probably more broadly in the profession and the sticks that sit around the profession, we're a little bit like cogs in a machine at the moment that are just spinning on their own, thinking they're doing a great job of being a cog because they can spin really fast when they're spinning on their own. But actually meaningful change only really happens when those cogs start to mesh together and the whole machine starts to drive change. But at least we're cogs spinning, and I think we can take that as a positive.
Yeah, agreed. And it's really a tough space as well, because I've done a little bit of work in market research as well, and so essentially what we're talking about is we want to make sure that it's evidence informed, we want to make sure that it's research backed, we want to make sure that it's got the experience of those people that are at the chalk face. Well, we could keep asking those questions all the time for as long as we do, and the consultation period, and then actually what will happen is then they'll also be in a position where they get told they don't do anything because they just spend all the time consulting people. So it could become a chicken and an egg and a challenge position. And I think, look at me defending the DFE. That doesn't happen very often. But I think what we're trying to say here is that there's got to be some input from the right people rather than just the same people. That's very important. I've heard that. And second of all, that is happening, but we need to make sure that is continues to be an iterative process rather than just a one-off. Right, we've done a consultation that happened. Then we've asked some people, so we've ticked the boxes if we wanted to. We re-listen to, and I think people who are the right people in the space to hearing that. And I suppose the difficulty ties into the difference of voices and the variety of voices that sit in there, because I think I mentioned there about marketing, market research, whatever else. I always think that most people have got an opinion about what marketing looks like and branding looks like, as well as they've got the same thing about a voice and a vision about what education is, because they've all been to school. So we all know what it should be like or what it shouldn't be like. And therefore, there's so much noise that how do we find the right people to be the people? And I think that is going to be a challenge as much as anything else. So as we kind of like take this into this next space, like many of you as representatives from organizations will need to balance this this tension, not always tension, but sometimes can be tension between meaningful innovation and this change across the sector with protecting our members and making sure that they are represented and heard. So it's $1 million question. I'm totally aware of that. But and maybe if I could come to you first, I'm gonna pick you, Aimee, because you're already unmuted. Could I come to you first and ask about like how can we get that balance right between representing our members and making sure that they're looked after, but also then pushing for that change and innovation that the sector we know needs?
It's a pretty tricky question, really. I was thinking how I was going to answer this one, but I think it's about innovation and change being responsible, and it goes back to that you're speaking to your last point about speaking from the membership. So we represent our members in terms of, we're a collective voice. So we're a much stronger voice altogether as the Chartered College than you would be perhaps if you were one teacher on your own. And you're absolutely right around this idea of getting the right voices in the room and making sure that the people who need to hear from the right people, and how do we select those people, et cetera, et cetera. But I think we do that pretty well as the Chartered College. I may be a bit biased, but we do, we survey our members, we talk to our members, we hear what's going on the ground, and then we respond on their behalf, which I think is, important and always based on the best that evidence tells us. And that's important. It's not based on, a whim or a nuance or whatever is cool and trendy at that time. So I think that's really important, but it's tricky.
Yeah, it is a trick. It's a delicate balance, isn't it? And I know that, Matt, you're not a representative of ASCL and you come in with your own voices, but you probably will talk about how ASCL do that in that space. What do you think as a professional body? How have you seen that being done well, or how could it be done well?
I mean, I think ASCL does a phenomenal job with its work on DEIB. I think, you know, they've been ahead of the game really in making sure that the networks that they've set up to support people from a whole range of backgrounds, and I think they do a really good job at you know, listening to that group and informing policy at a national level, but also kind of just giving a safe space to have conversations and then generating agency from that, which I think is really important. So I think, yeah, I think teaching unions have got an interesting balance there, haven't they? Because they do want to protect. I think the fact that we've even gone to the idea of protecting shows where the profession feels it's at the moment. It's a very stressed profession, feeling under a lot of pressure from a lot of different sources. But you know, with a really good partnership between any professional organisation and their government, there should be a real opportunity to balance, you know, improving incrementally the system that we work in with and taking teachers on that journey. So yeah, I think the unions do a really good job at the notion of protection, but we shouldn't feel like we need to protect as much as we do.
Yeah, agreed. And I'm going to introduce Joe in a moment, who's joined us, for those people who've seen, who's joined us in the studio. But I'm just going to jump to you in a minute as well, Jack. But what I will say is that I think what I've just heard from that is that idea of things are coming from every angle. And what we've got to be really balanced here is that we do need to look after these professionals that are professionals, as Aimee's been mentioning there. But when every new reform, new financial burden, new curriculum, new assessment, new SEND white paper, new blah 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 blah, we've got to do the bit to protect, but also make sure that, and use that word like that, iterative conversation. So it's not necessarily, because once on a day we used to say as Edufuturists, and we've been quite open about this, that revolution, and actually as I've got a bit older, I think I've softened a little bit on this space, that we need to probably bring the people with us. And you said that, Matt, and Jack, you also said that about making sure that we bring the right people on the journey with us. Do you want to add anything into that, buddy, in terms of that balance as a representative of members, Jack?
Did your sound just go?
Mine?
I can hear you fine.
Okay.
It's all good. Yeah, I completely agree with my fellow panelists on this. You know, things like just regular engagements, consultations with reps. These are bringing people along, being there early. You know, understanding what's going on. I think is kind of where we should be, really, and all stakeholders need to be at the table, really.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So it's about bringing stakeholders to the table and making sure that we have good representation in there, which is important. So we have got, like I've mentioned, that there is another person joined us in the space. This is Joe Wilson. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about you, and then I'm going to ask your opinion there in terms of like the representation, because your organisation is more is a little different than some of the others that are in the panel.
Yeah, I hope you can all hear me. So two differences. I've mainly worked in further education and also mainly in Scotland, where the landscape's different. And again, every time I say the landscape's different, always different. I used to have fights in Whitehall when
Just gonna stop you, Joe. It's just breaking up a little bit, and I don't know if it is for anybody else. Yeah. We'll just pause you there, Joe, and if you could maybe just come out of the studio and come back in, it might let you. It might then fix itself. I'm just conscious that obviously we've got some people online. Technical things happen. This is why we can't do everything online, right? So yeah, Joe, if you could just leave and come back in, that would help in that space. And I think it'd be nice, we can move into that space, and when Joe comes back in, we can pick it back up. Steve, do you want to pick up the next space?
Yeah, absolutely. So we kind of talked about protection as in terms of, rather than pushing innovation. Innovation is so many different things, and I suppose the question to ask first is to then think about, what is the biggest tension? You know, we have a retention and a recruitment crisis in education. It's not going away. It's only growing. But also, like, what is the biggest tension? Is it workforce well-being? Is it workload as a whole? Is it the pace of technology change? Definitely, probably, and especially around AI. What are we seeing there? What are the biggest tensions as individuals in your roles, but also like in supporting your members, but also the feedback that you're getting from the members and the people associated with your organisations? Jack, I don't know if you want to come in first on that bit.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say that I think probably fear of change, job security, having to reskill if the jobs change dramatically and you have to find something new. There is, AI is a huge threat that's not just on the horizon now. It's now very much in the room, and schools need to engage with AI going forward. But I do think this is going to be potentially a threat to the workforce and create tensions amongst some of the members, as it were. I think we need to, you talk about workload, etc. I do think that's something that's going to be perhaps hopefully resolved a bit using AI as well. So it's not just a threat, but it's also potentially something that's going to be quite helpful as well, because we know teachers have got a huge amount of workload on their desk, and if AI can be used to a certain extent to help with some of that in a meaningful way. And I think we should remember AI is not going to be any silver bullet or anything. It's going to work alongside the students and the teachers at the end of the day.
Cheers, Jack. Aimee, anything from your side? And then come to
Yeah,
you.
so what Jack said, really, I think AI offers promise, like it's coming, so or it's already here. So I think it does offer some promise in terms of teacher workload, and we've just Churchill just done a really interesting project with the DFE around the safe use of AI, which has been successful and useful because it's just all moving so fast. I think that the teacher workload and kind of the well-being thing is really a thing. Like, I think back to when I was a new teacher, and I think, gosh, I had an easy ride in comparison to how teachers work now. I think maybe I've just looked back with rose-tinted glasses. I don't know. There's definitely a thing around. I read someone had put it on LinkedIn just now, and it said something like, when you work really hard for something that you don't believe in, it's stress. When you work really hard for something you really believe in, it's passion. And loads of educators have that. But I do also think there's an element of, we shouldn't be kind of I'm trying to say it without swearing, but taking the mick out of that. We shouldn't rely on that too much. Teaching should be a job that you can do alongside your family life and everything else, and it shouldn't take all the extra time that it takes. And that brings me really to this idea around, like, teachers having some agency over what they do, how they plan, how they all of that kind of thing, how they work in their classrooms, which is a really interesting kind of theme that's running around at the moment, like teacher agency versus complete alignment and do exactly what you're told about everything. So I think that's really interesting. But I feel positive. There's no choice but to be positive, right? So I feel positive about the potential that AI might have for teachers and in classrooms. So
I was just going to add an example in, if that was all right, Ben, which is I went to a conference and I heard from a college actually, and they were using AI to prepare the handouts for the lesson, and they were able to quickly generate different handouts for different students depending on their reading ability, depending on whether they were Polish first language, etc. And this is just a brilliant way that saves teachers a lot of time and helps deliver first class learning to those individuals in that classroom. And that's where AI can be a real benefit, I see.
Absolutely. Matt, your thoughts, and then we'll come to you, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, I think my own personal view on the whole workload kind of agenda is it's a little bit getting off the government trying to get off the hook on actually the conditions that are expected of teachers as professionals at the moment. I think a sort of a 10% PPA, given the expectations that are on teachers now, is really significant. But schools aren't funded in a way where we could in any way reform that. And we'll go back to the point about actually a stronger presentation of a stronger position for teaching unions probably would have allowed that to be addressed, but we're not in that position. I think Aimee's point around teacher agency is a really interesting one, and there's two big tensions, I would say, which is the intensity of the work for teachers. Actually teaching is really hard work, and then the pressure, just the delivery of it's hard enough, and then the pressure around achieving results is dried the profession out quite a lot. If I think about what I did 20 years ago, the things I loved were D&V, doing science club after school. Those were being a form tutor. Those are the things that drove the passion. The rest of the work just kind of hung off that. And the response to workload has been centralisation. I do, sharing resources. There's a lot of important stuff in there, but we have definitely stripped some of that agency away. I do think there's probably a question to be answered around what we're training teachers in as well, and I don't think there's a strong enough emphasis on child development in teacher training, and I think that would help contextualise the importance of our work. It's become very much we are there to transmit knowledge for children to retain, to go and get exam results, and nobody comes into the profession for that, in my experience. So yeah, I think there's a lot there. I will say on the AI front, and I've probably said this before to you, Ben, AI saved me when I first stepped into being a CEO. So for me to stand here and say, I'll sit here and say, AI is not going to have a transformative impact, but it is already having a huge impact on what we can do in our schools, and used responsibly, it will have a significant impact. But I think it should make the working conditions for teachers better alongside significant structural reform. And that's my view.
And Joe, I'll come to you in a second, but I've been lucky that I won't name the college group in some of the work and some of the conversations I've been having in terms of a cultural piece. But ultimately, I think education, and the way that I'm framing education, and this isn't all, is farming versus rainforest. Our education system is very grey, is very farmer-led. Everything is in rows, everything is processed, everything looks really organised and efficient. But actually what that breeds is the learners are kind of like, we plant the learners, we tell them when they're going to be fed. The farm workers only work and clock in and out when the farmer tells them to, the leaders tell them. And that's probably not the leadership, Matt, in terms of your context or your Aimee, right from the very top. But it creates everybody in rows, and it's just a little bit dull, I'll be honest, as a whole system. I think I would like to think of it as a rainforest, just a wonderful shoot of nature. I've been lucky enough to lead organisations and to observe and go into different classrooms of what outstanding, not a grade, what outstanding teaching and learning looks like is very different from subject to subject, day to day, teacher to teacher, time to time. And it's ultimately, how can we make sure that there is accountability, and great accountability to make sure that we are doing the right thing for our learners. But at the same point, autonomy comes with that. And actually right now we are cultivating our crop into narrow rows rather than just allowing shoots of outstanding practice just to happen across the rainforest floor, where a little bit drain drops and you just go, I didn't see that yesterday. Because we're just not allowing it from learners, from educators, from leaders, from across home mats and local authorities, all the way up. We are cultivating our crop and we are creating farms, and it's grey. It looks great in summer when nobody's in, and that's not a criticism. I think that's just my opinion of education. I want to see a rainforest of outstanding practice, absolutely, across the profession, and I think we get back to it. And again, I'm waffling. Ben, apologies. But ultimately, we need to ask ourselves, human intelligence versus artificial intelligence. If you think really and drill down, and if we were to ask learners of any age and other educators, what do you think a human teacher or a human can never be replaced? And the roles that it plays. If you take all of that bit, we focus on that and get AI to do the rest, we give back to profession the bit that we absolutely love and the learners love about the teachers. They don't remember a maths lesson on a Friday afternoon. I'm sorry to tell you if you're delivering maths on a Friday afternoon. I didn't. But ultimately, they don't remember that. They remember how you were great as a coach. They remember all of the wonderful things about why you were a great person, not the subject itself.
For anybody who needs a translation, for anybody who needs a translation, human is Yorkshire for human. So,
sorry. So I'm getting human. Free and free is definitely not one as well. I are literally from a council estate, so just bear that in mind. Often people go, I think Steve was saying something that actually would have had impact, but we just didn't understand him. That's absolutely fine as well. We'll put subtitles on and it'll go out like that. But get me off my soapbox. I'll step back. Joe, in terms of, let's introduce yourself. And the question was, Joe, what is the biggest tensions from your scene in regards to well-being, workload, but also the pace of change in terms of technology?
Yeah, so first of all, introduction. I work for, or I'm a trustee of the Association of Learning Technology, which works right across the UK, but mainly further education and higher education. And we work with learning technologists. And I'll maybe explain to you what a learning technologist is in a minute or two. But I was a school teacher. I was a college lecturer for years too. The Scottish education system is very different, and it always has been very different since the Act of Parliament, and the Union of the Crowns and all of these kind of things, which I always have to remind people, because quite often people say, well, Scottish, it's all these nationalists, but it's not. It's always been slightly different. It's not just a product of us having our own devolution and things, but all the challenges are the same. The challenge is the same. Our teachers are all stressed out. There's rising violence in Scottish classrooms. We've made really hard attempts to close what they call the attainment gap, and it's not changed. I'm just come from a conference chatting about open education and sharing resources between universities and colleges, which we've talked about for years, but still isn't really happening in practice. AI is terrifying absolutely everyone, but the terrifying bit means that they're not actually looking at all the advantages. We had a great session this afternoon, and again, I think just touched on when I came into the meeting, it was actually just using the translation tools in PowerPoint and various other translation tools, so that Vietnamese students could translate learning materials into their own language and do all of these things. We actually are. Learning's an enormously exciting place. We just need to get everybody else to be excited about it, and we need to change up how we do it. I think that's the challenge. And I completely agree with Matt and Duke of Edinburgh and all these kind of things. I mean, on my spare time, why I came into teaching was I did the Scouts, and I'm still the chair of a Scout group and all of these kind of things. We need to think about different ways of enthusing people to learn, and we're not doing that. And actually, one of the challenges we've got is these things, these phones and things. It's not just Snapchat and all these other things being addictive and all these things. They're just more exciting and more interesting than some of the boring fare that we're offering people. We need to up our game, I think, to get engagement. And it's hard to say to the teaching profession to up their game, because they're coping with all of the challenges. We need high level sort of system change to get everybody moving together and forward. And we've got the same issue in Scotland. It's not a Scottish versus English thing. I mean, I see the news. It's the same challenges we've got with young people, and it's pretty much the same challenges we've got in the college space. And probably the same challenges around the elitism and university space too, although we do have a different university funding model in Scotland. Does that all make sense? But the organisation I represent is a UK one that develops learning technologies. I'll give you the links and all of these kind of things. And actually, for me and for lots of people, CMALT, the chartered membership of the Association of Learning Technology, opened up new careers and things for me as well. And at the moment too, of course, everybody's an expert in all of this. I've been doing learning technology since the last century, when we were kept in cupboards.
yeah, and I love that. Aimee, you were going to jump in. Was something you were going to add into that?
I was just going to bring the positivity back to the room, guys, because actually, I know the rainforest thing, the learning in farms. I get that, right? But there is a million great practitioners out there doing brilliant things in their classrooms every day where all the sparkle is happening, and our teachers are doing that regardless of what's happening in the system.
And that's almost a beautiful segue to mention at this point that the Edufuturist Awards voting is open, because in exactly that very vein, we acknowledge that when you're pushing and saying it could be this, it could be that, it could be the other, it's very, very easy to forget those people who are doing incredible shoots of outstanding practice. And I think that's the reason why we set up the awards 8 years ago, is to try and help recognise that. I know awards are just one thing, but that's why we do that, and why the organisations that back that and do that. Last year we had 32,500 votes in that space. This year, within 24 hours of it going live, we've got 2,500 votes ready, and more people than we've ever had. So that whole recognition and celebrating, and awards is, like I say, is just one thing, but awards help into that space to help navigate the tension between this is what we see and this is what we hope to happen, and actually it's not all doom and gloom, but it's also not all put our heads in the sand and forget about it. And I don't think anybody on the panel is saying either of those two positions. Interestingly, our old mate Dan Fitzpatrick, who used to be on the podcast with us, says that we live in a liminal space, and it's a religious studies term. It's a religious term, which is the idea of that we're stood in this space between what is and what could be, and it feels like quite a tough place to be. Look at that, philosophical deep for
really exciting place to be, right?
Yeah.
That is the flip side of that. We are living with what could be, which is, we're all doing a great job. All of our schools are doing brilliant things for their kids. This is what could happen. So,
Yeah, so I'm with you. I'm with you on it as well, and I am too, because I think these shoots of good practice, and also these people, this vast sector that's managing to do, despite really difficult situations, still managing to do incredible things. Let's celebrate that, and then and also do it. So it's not either or. So we're gonna to make it positive and practical. We're gonna ask a question which is around effective collaboration. So we're at a point now where the organisations that many of you represent, professional organisations, employers, the government, other stakeholders in that space need to work together. And what does effective collaboration look like then if we're to see education evolve rather than that stagnate? What could it look like? And I wonder if I could come to you first, dear Matt, and then ask other people to jump in their thoughts.
I like the way we've tried to be more positive, and then you give me a question with the word stagnating. It's not the most positive spin, Ben, to start.
No, what I'm saying is, so we don't stagnate, that we're going to evolve. Okay,
definitely. I think I'm going to be more positive, and my glass is always half empty. I think we need a strong vision for us all to pull behind, and I think in the last week we've had a good old go at that. I think the white paper probably does constitute the most strong direction we've had in a long time. I think it's particularly bold given everything else is quite turgid within the political system. I think what the Department for Education and Bridget Phillipson have pushed out is a really good representation of the steps we need to take. So I think in that sense, when we've got a strong vision, that is your platform for good collaboration, isn't it? If everybody's got something they can start to pull towards. And I think there's just got to be a real commitment to maybe lowering some of that intensity of the impact of accountability. I think that's probably stifled the most transformation within the system. If I think back to how things were 2008, 2009, I think high stakes accountability really has crushed a lot of, I've gone negative again, I'm really sorry. It's crushed some of that creativity. But I think now is an opportunity for us to really celebrate that. And I think the points Aimee's made have been really good, because teachers are really great people every bloody day, aren't they? They are really great people every day, and irrespective of a lot of the political stuff that goes on. The minute they shut their classroom door and they've got 30 kids in front of them, they are really dedicated to those people, with really good, those little people with really great relationships. And I think So I think if you've got a collective responsibility for the kids and you're all there working for the kids and you've got a platform and a vision to work together, that's really the foundations for really strong collaboration. So the next bit really would be just making sure that we're contextualizing accountability in the right way, and then providing that space for those conversations to happen.
So I think yeah, all of that. I think the high stakes accountability system, which we've all kind of like worked under and been part of, etc., has had some very tricky consequences, awful in some respects. I think, you know, that's still there. I don't think the new government or the current government are apologetic in any way for like this drive for the highest standards for everybody, in particular disadvantaged. But who can't get behind that message? Who can't get behind the message of, you know, we should make teaching a brilliant job that everybody wants to do for their whole life, and what we should do is with this drive to support all children. So I think it's, I don't know, maybe I'm naive, but I think it's pretty exciting right now. Even Ofsted is what it is, you know, the inspectorate is there for whatever everybody thinks about it, but even that this time feels like it's been more collaborative. It feels like it's panning out in maybe a better way. So there's maybe hope. But I think what is interesting is, speaking to an earlier point around like, do we spend time collaborating and consulting, or do we just get on with the job? It probably feels frustrating to do all the kind of consulting and all of that, because you just want to get on with what it is, but it's so important. And that's right back to the kind of role that professional organizations play on behalf of their members. So, you know, it's hopeful.
Yes, I agree. Joe, what would you add into that in terms of the collaboration? What can we do to improve collaboration in that space?
Again, I think it's about supporting. It's about mutual support every time. It's about that bit of making sure. I mean, again, I'm coming at it from that learning tech bit, and as soon as you say learning tech, people roll their eyes, but it's actually it is learning tech. It's helping and supporting, having an infrastructure in place that's friendly to teachers and friendly to learners, and closes the digital divide and solves the problems that teachers want solved. It's not just sticking technology in for its own sake, and having people round about it that understand how it all works. And again, that's what alt kind of does. We develop people, we grow people that in policy forums, trying to encourage people to adopt all of this in an ethical way, because there's ethical issues all around technology just now. I mean, even at the moment, around sort of digital imperialism, you know, who controls Microsoft and Google and all of these things, and somebody could switch them off. I don't think that'll come to pass, because we're bought into all of these all of these systems. But all of that is whirling around us just now as well, and it's keeping your feet steady on the deck in a storm, and looking to the horizon, because all of this technology offers wonderful ways to excite learners, to create short courses, to deliver things in different ways, to give teachers back some time. I think that's the other bit. But to give teachers back some time in a meaningful way, not just so they can then get. I think that so I am actually really quite hopeful about all this, but we are going through a very, very tumultuous time, both in Scotland and in England. Again, I'm not blowing Scotland's trumpet, but curriculum for excellence and some of the competency-based models of learning, and the Welsh curriculum as well, actually I think kind of shows the way, where you're not overloading people with lots and lots of content and knowledge, and you are trying to develop the competencies. But it's hard. It's hard because the cultural hierarchy doesn't like that. They want everybody to be loaded up with lots and lots of essential knowledge that might not be essential for them.
Shall I jump in, Ben?
Yeah, do.
I mean, I guess add to that. You know, I think there is. I mean, as has been alluded to earlier, there's positivity around this SEND white paper, which has come out finally, and the new white paper. I think that they have listened. I think the fact that they are looking to retain and recruit more teachers, I think 6,500 is the number that's been mentioned, more teachers. That has got to definitely help those teachers who feel overwhelmed and swamped by the workload that they've got at the moment. And there has been a push over many years to also make schools more inclusive and to, I guess, have more SEND provision within mainstream schools. And I think that the push towards having more teacher training is a really positive one, and to look at that again, because I mean, we need to push out great teachers and we do have great teachers, but we need to push them out with the right skills to understand and deliver today's digital, education system that we find around us. And they need to have those skills on board to be able to deliver effectively, I think.
Before I move on to my question, the next question, I'm gonna stay positive. I'm gonna think Aimee. I'm gonna go Aimee. Absolutely. So here we go. Okay. So you might not know, but Aimee, how many educators and leaders does the Child College represent?
So we've got tens of thousands of people who are members. But in terms of the kind of the reach of that, so it could be one member in a school who share all of their things with the rest of their school as a research champion or similar. I don't know, multiple times that. So we think about it in terms of like, how many children are we having an impact on? Hopefully millions.
Okay. Okay. Matt, I know you're not representing ASCL, but how many members do we think ASCL has?
Sorry, that was me. 20. Got the right button. I nearly clicked it. 26,000, I think. 26,000. Okay, Joe, how many members does the Association of Learning Technologists have? You're on mute. I am going somewhere, by the way. I'm terrible at maths, so when I say a million, let's say
very, very, very different. It's probably got around 700 members, because it's the technologists that support universities and colleges around the UK. There's not hundreds of us or thousands of us. It's that specialist. It's that specialist niche I work in. Yeah.
Perfect. And Jack, how many for you?
Yeah, so BATA, the British Assistive Technology Association, has just under 100 members, but it does have several thousand people who follow its activities, etc. And there is a general push towards increasing up assistive technology in the curriculum in the UK. So I imagine that will continue to grow.
And that wasn't to call out who has more or less. Just to call it out. It's not about the number, it's about the strength of the number. But if you think collectively, we're talking about tens of thousands, even in just this call. Me and Ben are lucky to lead a community of about 4,000 in the UK and then greater. Okay, if we're talking about collaboration, wouldn't it be wonderful that if we all work together, not for profit, but for the benefit of education and learners, and we filled football stadium size amounts of people all coming together to collaborate and to have wonderful conversations around how they can learn from each other. And we have one in Murrayfield. I'm sure there's other football stadiums. We have Wembley. I prefer it Ellen Road because I'm from Yorkshire, but let's go Wembley because everybody wants to talk about UK and London. And then you maybe do Cardiff and you maybe do wherever. Imagine we fill through communities in honest collaboration, and it's not about this is my silo and this is my community, so we protect this. Imagine if we shared and opened up all of our communities together just from this call, the impact that we would have on all of those people. That is true collaboration of how do we get those into a stadium, collaborating, not for profit. Somebody has to fund it, absolutely. It breaks even. Imagine what we would do if we took that collaboration piece across all of the organisations on here and every other single one, and people stop talking about, well, these are my members. Imagine if we just said, everybody transforms it, everybody's invited, and the wonderful 100 from Jack and the wonderful 700 from Joe might be able to be really great expertise in regards to delivering some sessions that have an impact on the rest of the tens of thousands that attend. Imagine that for true collaboration and a movement of educators going forward. If you talk about that thinking, Aimee, imagine, how do we do that? But anyway, I'm going off. Ben's like, we've got a webinar going on, Steve. It's not a podcast. Well, imagine that. Imagine the groundswell of transformation for every single educator that comes together, whether you've been teaching for 25 years or if you've been teaching 25 days. Imagine if that happened.
Let's do it. When are we doing it?
Steve, up for that, Steve.
Right. I'm on it. Absolutely. Absolutely, Ben. I don't know how we're going to do it. We've got the Invisible Win Factory. We've got 450.
We've got 450 to start with, but let's see if we can get some stadiums. Let's make that happen.
What a wonderful place that would be, where the profession is valued and is supportive of each other, to then say, you know what, I'll tuck my elbows in, come and join the circle. You might be here on your own because you don't know anybody else, but come and join our network and let's help you. Because that problem that you had yesterday, I had 5 weeks ago and I've solved it. Yeah. It's just literally imagine it. Anyway, I'm not asking questions here, Ben. Sorry, I'm just literally just throwing out bombs. But I'm trying to be Aimee and positive here. So in terms of as we evolve as a profession, FE and I spent quite 17 years in further education in regards to what we define educator or a teacher as is very different depending on context, depending on age group. Actually, what the teaching family can become, and the titles and the names that we call our staff members and educators might change, and it might actually form a new identity and a professional identity as us as organisations and roles within it. What do we think might emerge as educators over the next decade, and how should you as organisations support that? And I'm going to start with Joe first, if that's okay, in terms of, rather than just calling them learning technologists, what other roles to support as co-professions might support education going forward, do we feel?
Well, I think it's kind of happened already. I probably wouldn't talk just. We probably are much more lecturer developers than learning technologists now, because learning technologies become mainstream. So a lot of the things that staff did in the background to support systems and pedagogy, actually we're now cascading onto. So increasingly, learning technologists work in learning and teaching academies, which are like internal staff development things, and they're basically lecturing or teacher developers is where they are just now. But I also think that that's part of the bigger change. You know, the role of teaching and the role of lecturing is changing as well. That we're much more pedagogic guides, I think, or we should be becoming. Supporters and guides and all of these kind of things, because the nature of knowledge is changing, and how we want our learners to negotiate the occupational and knowledge landscapes that are around us are changing, and I think that's the bit that's coming. That over the next 10 years, not just the role of learning technologists, but the role of teachers is going to change. I think the role of colleges is going to change as well. Ideally we would welcome back more people more young people in the workplace, and different ways of delivering to them in the workplace. That probably would help them and help us too, give them a different purpose. These are the kind of things I think will happen over the next 10 years in the space I work in college space. I'd like to think universities get much more flexible, but I still can't see that coming. They're so wedded to signing people up for 3 years or 4 years and taking everybody's money. I think their offerings should be a lot more flexible too. I think that will come to pass, but I think that'll take a huge political fight for that to happen. But I think it's on its way. Micro credentials and all of these kind of things are all happening. I think for us as professionals, and this probably isn't that great news. Lifelong learning will become more of a thing for all of us. That there'll be other wee hoops that we probably need to jump through, but that's going to be a part of every occupation. We've all got continuous professional development. We've got all these kind of things. Suddenly there'll be much more bits, mini certificates to practice and things before you do things. But it's all about raising the competency level of all of us. I think that's going to happen too. So
Thanks,
there you go. But it's not bad. It's just a change. Just change.
Absolutely. Everybody wants change. Nobody just wants to change is often the
Yeah.
motto and the thought. But Aimee, I can see you nodding your head. Any thoughts that you want to come at that?
Yeah, so I always think I like the lifelong learning thing, but from a completely positive angle, you'll be surprised to hear. Like, it's just that, wouldn't that be great? Like, you start your career, you know, I started my career as a primary teacher. It's very different. It's still to do with primary schools now, but it's very different what I do now. And, you know, I've learned about all sorts of stuff along the way. I think primary teachers are obviously pretty much generalists and have to be pretty agile. I think we're all going to learn more stuff. We're all going to get better at supporting pupils with all sorts of different needs. It's going to be all our responsibility. That's going to happen over time. But how brilliant to be able to learn all that stuff and keep learning, because after all, that's the whole point of being a teacher, right? To get people, children, to learn. So, you know, I think that's just super exciting. And even better if we can do it together and benefit from each other's expertise in the stadium.
Love that.
In the
Matt?
stadium, Steve, in the stadium.
Let's do it. Matt?
Yeah, I'd definitely like to see teachers given the time and the opportunity to do much more active inquiry in their classrooms, to really contextualise evidence into their classrooms, but then be given the opportunity to share that, probably in a football stadium, Steve, if I'm being really honest with you, but maybe just in their schools to begin with, and that's professionalism, isn't it? You know, inquiry about what works, sharing it as a professional. And I do think there's a piece for us to consider about that professional identity in the community, and what that means for parents. And I don't know the answer to that yet, but there needs to be an opportunity for us to have a really, you know, good conversation around what are the parental expectations of a teacher in a primary school, in a secondary school, and how do we regain that sense of authority of the significant adults in children's lives? Because at the moment that isn't working brilliantly, but there is. I think the research shows, actually, doesn't it, that parents don't respect your pet teachers less. Teachers feel like parents respect them less. And so I think there's still that opportunity there to really just establish that relationship in a really constructive way. I mean, my thought is, partly during the pandemic, we were heroes. Teachers were heroes, bravely going, you know, to school. And we're never going to, I hope to God, we're never going to be that awesome again, because it was terrifying, but also because, you know, the pressure we were under at the time. So, and in some ways, we're never going to live up to that again. But we need that kind of conversation as a society about how we want the profession to serve the communities.
Yeah,
Jack?
Yeah.
I was just going to say something about, you know, obviously the output of the education system is the students or the pupils going into the workplace. And, you know, we are at quite a crisis point at the moment where there are so many young people who aren't getting into work at all, whether they haven't got the right skills or, you know, the jobs just don't match up for them. You know, we need to really try and work on how we can get these young people inspired during the schooling process and support them to get into work. I don't know whether that means more sort of internships, more work experience from a younger age, you know, giving them the opportunity to find, to get into whether it's manufacturing or construction, doing a bit of that for a week or two in the holidays. You know, I think we need to try and really match up the education with the jobs from an earlier age. And I think the teachers have got a role here in you know, personalizing the students' learning, which is helped a bit by AI, and I guess help get them ready for work, so that when they leave school, they're all set and you know, can get on their way in a successful sort of you know.
Yeah. So it's the idea that the collaboration then is for the main stakeholders in education, right? Who are the children?
That's
and,
right.
And the young people, whatever age of person, or not even young person, because education is, we know, cradle to grave, isn't it? So it's understanding that the people that we are trying to collaborate for need to be at the focus of that, and that's a really powerful part of what we do here. Is that we're talking about representative of our members. But our members actually then, when we talked about the 20,000 or the 700 or the 250, they represent hundreds of thousands and millions of young people in education that we are actually wanting to make sure we've got a better space for, a better space for. Look at my enunciation getting better as we've gone through. So, Jack, I'm going to come straight back to you, if this is all right with this next one first, because the idea about professional identity is important. I think that we understand that we've talked about this professionalism in education, and how might a new form of professional identity emerge for people in education over the next period of time, and how can we respond?
Yeah, I mean, I think as I alluded to in my last point, I think this general upskilling, constantly we've got to push out children who are a level above what the previous generation pushed out, and so they need to be upskilled. And I think we're going to have more teachers who hopefully they'll have more space to work, because there's more teachers coming into the system to support them. So we're not going to be 32 children in one classroom, and the teachers run off their feet all day long. Maybe they'll have more time to plan and to do some of those wider curriculum activities as we spoke about at the very beginning. But people like I guess learning architects who might be looking at how we can personalize the journey for the young person, and not just looking at that 1 year they're in, but maybe their progression through primary to secondary to college to university. And certainly in the sector that I'm in around assistive technology, there's talk about, and SEND, I guess, there's talk about like passporting schemes where young people, rather than being assessed at different times, they can bring with them some information to each school, which helps them go on their journey and not having to be asked every time, what works for you, what's great. Their teachers can already see that they use voice to text or text to speech or mind mapping software to help them on their way. So I do hope that technology is going to help these teachers of the future to further enhance and make curriculum more relevant, as I think Joe was saying as well earlier. We've got to have really curriculum that's relevant and engaging, otherwise we lose them on the journey and they potentially drop out.
Joe, do you want to jump onto that as a thought in terms of how we develop these new professional identities?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is all of that. I mean, Jack's hit on it. That bit of personalisation is going to come for everyone. It's going to come for learners. It's going to come for teachers too. That bit of and Aimee hit on it as well. That bit of how do you want to develop? What are the offers for you to develop different kinds of skills? We're going to become still all together, but much more diverse in the kind of support and things that we can access. And that's part of professionalism. I mean, there will always be, back to the kind of learning technology stuff, by its very nature, there'll always probably be, it might actually all disappear into the cloud, but there should always be folk that will be a way out at the bleeding edge. But the main thing is that everybody's coming with us now. Post pandemic. I mean, I cracked a joke at one point. One of our education ministers said at the end of the pandemic, that's the end of blended learning. And it was like the worst thing he could ever have said, because it's not the end of blended. This is just the beginning of blended learning. We're just on chapter 1 of blended learning. It's going to be all through everything. When I say blended learning, I don't mean more online textbooks or boring stuff. It's going to come all kinds of exciting things. We can measure competencies in all kinds of ways now. And we need to get all of that moving. But it is all of that bit about personalised resources, all of these things that help Jack send learners, but it helps everybody. More personalised learning will support everybody, and that's what's coming.
Amazing. Matt, any thoughts?
Didn't Steve ask this question before, Ben? Without meaning to be rude, I'm just checking.
He's jumped questions. Have you jumped questions, Steve? Did you do that?
Yeah,
I just asked him in order, Ben. You went first, and we're just following the order. You've just missed.
Sorry, I'm much less polite than Joe and Jack, and so I thought we'd all enjoy the moment. Yeah. Me highlighting that. Ben, I'm really.
Do you know what? Right, what we're gonna no, that's absolutely fine. This is a blooper reel, and what we're gonna do is if it was Steve had done that, I would have made a massive deal of it, and I would have made it, and then I've been making a big point of it. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut this part out now, joking. It's live on YouTube. Apologies. So I'm gonna ask. Thank you for Joe, Jack, for being so polite and
they were brilliant.
Yeah, really, really good for making out like we'd said something totally different. I'm really sorry. I've been striking through the questions on the thing as we're going, but Obviously, it's just on me. Okay, so we talked about collaboration. The idea is about co-creation. I mentioned about learners and policymakers and educators stuff before. So I'm going to come to you, Matt, then about co-creation, because there's a difference there necessarily about collaboration, but that idea around co-creation. How do we make sure that this is the agency piece that Aimee talked about earlier? How do we make sure that we do this together and make sure that everybody wins?
So
sorry, by the way, everybody who's listening.
I enjoyed it. I think first of all is creating the space for the professionals to do transformative work, to really push the boundaries on what we're doing on behalf of the rest of the profession. And whether that's inquiry, like I was talking about before, but doing something different, because otherwise we're just going to keep creating the same things over and over again, and then providing the space for that learning to be shared in a way that we can genuinely start to co-construct something different. I think we've got to consider the collective intellect of the teaching profession, and everything that we can do to nourish and enrich and grow and develop that, that would drive really strong co-creation. I think with learners, it's really, really important that we not consult, not the right word, is it? That we listen to their voice in the right way. I've done lots on student voice, and sometimes you can go a bit far. We don't really need kids observing lessons, but we do need to hear their voice in their experiences. And I think particularly now more than ever, that if we want children to have genuine agency in their learning, their voice has to be valued and has to be heard. And I think creating that space for co-creation at a local level to then inform things at a national level is just really important. I like that question, Ben. I found it a bit difficult in comparison to the other ones, but I really enjoyed it.
Thanks. Well, at least you didn't get asked the same question twice, eh? Aimee, would you add anything into that in terms of like how we can do that? Because I know that you'll probably build on the point you made about agency as well, right?
Yeah, so I think all of the things Matt said, really. I think like across the profession, the teachers and maybe the children are the ones that know the answers. It's like my teenage daughter saying to me, "Mum, you just don't understand." But she's totally right, because I didn't grow up in the world that she is growing up now, so I probably don't understand. And it's probably the same for teachers. When I was a classroom teacher, it wasn't the same as life is now, and those teachers are the ones that know. And I think, to speak to Matt's point again around kind of collaboration within areas, there's loads and loads of people out there doing the same work. Like there's trusts and schools across the country doing the same stuff. And I have to say, like, I was gonna say, why aren't we all doing it together? But actually, every time I'm looking at a new piece of work and I think I'm going to ask somebody, there's 100 people who want to help. So we're naturally that kind of people. I think we've lost the kind of competing with your next door school thing. And everybody does just want to help because we're all in it for the same reason. So, I think it's pretty positive, and I think it can be even more so with the right mechanisms in place to support that. And things like the Charter College Journal is, sorry to like be on message, on brand, but the Charter College Journal is brilliant, right? So we have a collection of people who are emeritus professors, but also classroom teachers, all contributing brilliant stuff for the benefit of everybody. That's just pretty joyful, really. So, I think it's great, really positive.
Joe, have you got your hand up? Do you want to come in?
Yeah, but just when you were saying that collaborative, and it's just to draw people's attention to something. So I'm the co-founder of something called Open Scotland that was founded in 2012, and it was founded when UNESCO started publishing guidance on public education, sharing learning materials and resources with Creative Commons or other appropriate open licenses. Not for profit, which allows all teachers to take somebody else's notes and switch them around, give them due credit that these notes were made by Joe Wilson, and then use them. So all of that's there. But basically, it still is a lobbying organisation. We haven't managed to get Scottish Government to move forward on it, and I don't think. I think ALT, the organisation I work for, is a keen supporter and advocate of all of this. But but some creative thinking around all of this. I mean, I'm also thinking about not just learning materials, but every college and school all have banks and banks of policies that get rewritten and rewritten and rewritten all of the time. A lot of these things should be, and I know good professional associations do share templates and things, but there should be a whole lot more sharing on all levels to make everybody's jobs much easier.
Absolutely, sounds great. Jack, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think just following on from that, I mean, I think there are really exciting ways to teach, and I think we can't expect every teacher to know every way to, smash the ball out of the park in the classroom, as it were. I know that my son, he would move schools, and he had really struggled with maths, but his new school, the teacher started teaching maths using murder mystery stories, and that made a big difference to him. He was suddenly really engaged and excited by the whole joy of learning maths all of a sudden. Yeah, I think you can do learning of something you find challenging without realizing it if it's done in an engaging way. And I love what Joe said, that having more teachers be able to collaborate across the sector as to how they can make the lesson land with great success, and keep those children, particularly as we talked about earlier, on a Friday afternoon when they're doing a maths lesson, it could be quite challenging. So yeah, I think, and I really loved what was said a minute ago, the whole idea of collaborating with students on how to create great classroom content. I don't remember ever at school the teachers turning around and saying, right, tell us, how did this term go? What did you find really engaging? What worked for you? What was really exciting? What stuff did you remember most, or find you like the most? And I think there could be a lot more of engaging with the student voice, and finding champions within who are happy to give a bit of extra time to support the teaching community within that school.
Absolutely, and it's really interesting. I don't know if anybody on the call has heard of the Youth Shadow Council. We interviewed on the podcast the Youth Shadow Council in regards to their thoughts on, and because they published an article on the curriculum review from a student body perspective, and sitting on that council are representatives from the Scouts, from many organisations representing millions of children across ages, and what they reviewed and what they published was significantly more forward thinking than what we've actually got, which is really interesting actually when you ask
Steve, why don't you pull your punches a little bit? Pull your punches a little bit.
No, I'm not, because ultimately I think it's one of those things of, because of the age of those learners, often they need to be framed and they need guardrails to understand, like bowling. You're not just going to send them off, and I always talk about that one. You're not just going to give them all of the heavy temping balls and go, off you go. What you're going to do is you're going to put some guardrails and the adults there to guide and support rather than to restrict. But ultimately, we've got some wonderful geniuses and knowledge under the age of 16. We just don't ask them the question because we think because of their age, they don't know enough often. But I think the Youth Shadow Council really change that, and if anybody gets an opportunity to listen to it, go see what the work they're doing and what they talked about and what they pushed for, and weren't as listened to, was so much more cutting edge than ultimately what we got. I don't think that's a criticism of what we got. I think it's just the fact that they just weren't listened to, and they should have been brought into conversation as a stakeholder. It's, we talk to parents, but ultimately let's talk directly to the students in terms of the collaboration. Imagine if policy that was impacting them was actually guided by them and considered by them often. I think it's a great one. Okay, we've got about 12 minutes left, so I'm going to throw a quick fire one in, but it is one that you've already got. Don't worry, don't. It's not a case of who'd win in a fight between a rat and a squirrel. I'm not going to throw a random interview question at you. What I'm going to say is short, as quick as you can. If we were to be running this conversation again in 5 years, what would your hope, think Aimee, what would your hope be that there's fundamentally changed about the profession and how it's supported and represented? What would you hope for as an individual or for your organisation? And Aimee, I'm going to come to you because we said let's think Aimee. So let's bring it home, Aimee, if that's all right.
So bringing it home. So this time in 5 years, everybody would be a member of the Chartered College, obviously, all teachers. As well as that, like, teaching would genuinely be a job for life. And when people said to you, what job do? You'd say, yeah, I'm a teacher. And you'd be super proud of that. and it would hold the status of, I don't know what jobs have that status now, maybe doctor, like, you know, I'm a brain surgeon or a rocket scientist, I'm a teacher. That would be amazing, wouldn't it, if we could get to that?
Absolutely would do. Jack, you next?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking something slightly left field, perhaps, but you know, greater engagement from business within schools. You know, trying to strengthen that link between the future job and the young learner, I think would be really exciting, and to see how we could get the connections working faster and better, so that those students can leave school and get into work, work they want to do, you know, perhaps try different things, you know, in the most effective way as possible.
Matt?
I just want to say it's a rat and Ben is completely wrong with squirrels. I want to start off by saying that. Secondly, I would agree with Aimee said actually about everyone being in the chart, every teacher being in the charter college. In that, I think there needs to be a really strong teacher voice re-established within the profession. I think too many advisory panels don't involve those at the chalk face. They are professionals. Too often it's filled with rooms full of people who do the job I do, and that's just not good enough. Interesting on that point, Aimee, I always introduce myself as a teacher. Far more proud to be a teacher than any other, maybe head teacher when I was a head. But yeah, the most proud job title I've ever had. I would say definitely more active teacher voice. But I would say that this, and I should probably say it as I'm a co-chair of a neuro inclusion group, but that the profession is more inclusive, particularly for those with neurodivergent needs, because I think the mental health of a lot of teachers is affected by working conditions that could be easily adjusted, particularly through tech and AI, to make their jobs a lot easier. I mean, Jack, I'm in your club. I am a certified dyslexic, and I would have been lost in this profession if in 2003 Birmingham City Council hadn't decided to give every NQT a laptop. My whole career trajectory would have been very, very different. So yeah, more inclusive.
Excellent. Joe?
Yeah, I think I agree with that. More inclusive, more diverse. I think we're moving into a really exciting time for learners and staff. I use the word educator. My kids, because I did teach in schools. I taught in schools for a couple of years, but mainly I spent my career in colleges. And in colleges, we used the word lecturer in inverted commas, but we never lectured. We were really teachers in colleges, which is the important bit. We had small groups and we taught people. So yeah, no, I'm still proud to be an educator. But I just think again, it's going to get this challenge. Some of the challenges that we've had for the last 30 years, I think, are going to diminish because we can personalize learning a lot more, and that's the bit that we should be pushing on. How do we personalize learning a lot more and harness a lot of this technology to do that, and not be scared to do that? We've spent too long trying to do one size fits all, and it's not worked for lots of learners.
Absolutely. And do you know what? That couldn't have been a better segue, Joe, into me and Steve have been writing a book about pick and mix education, that we say that one size fits all actually means one size fits none. Like we didn't even set that one up, Joe, but thank you for but you're absolutely right. I think I regularly say to people still, and I haven't taught now since 2020, and that sounds really bad. I say I haven't taught in a school or a college. I still teach online. I still deliver training in that space but still call myself a teacher. When people say to me, and in fact, Aimee introduced herself there. She says, by trade, I'm a primary school teacher. Matt said, I'm a science teacher by trade. Like, because it's in us. Steve still tells everybody he's a PE teacher because he wants people to still think he's fit, and he does that physical activity. I'm joking, but it's been it's great. We absolutely value the profession, and we're really grateful to those who still every day get up, make a difference in young people's lives and adults' lives. So thank you for those people who are watching or who will see this afterwards for all the work that you do. And also, I'm just going to say thank you to Parent Pay, who have helped us pull together some of the work that we're doing on this roadshow. And most importantly, other than to the people that have joined us online, thank you for joining us online. I want to say a huge thank you to our panelists from this evening who have given us their time and their thoughts. And we've really enjoyed this conversation. We have a little background chat, me and Steve, where we're just having a little bit of a conversation about how important it is and how much fun we're having in this space. And just for anybody who wants to know, when Steve says who would win in a fight between a rat and a squirrel, Matt has done some work on Gemini, and officially Gemini says that a rat wins 8 times out of 10. So if AI says it, it's true. That isn't the point of the thing. The last thing I'm going to finish with, other than a thank you to our panelists today, really do appreciate you, Joe, Jack, Matt, and Aimee. Steve, you're all right, mate. But thank you to you guys for joining us from your organisations and representing the wonderful work that he's been doing across education and supporting education. I am just going to just mention, for those people who are watching, our next webinar, which is, we are super excited that we're going to be looking at multi-academy trust. And on the screen now, you can see our guests that are going to be joining us in this one, multi-academy trust and networks, on the 26th of March. Same time, 4:30 till 6. We've got a whole host of people, and there are actually another couple more to join us into that space. So, yeah, it's going to be a good one. And if you are the day before, if you want to come to Cardiff, we're in Cardiff in person, so come and join us. You find out all your information at edufuturists.com/roadshow. It feels like that I'm doing like the sell bit now, but I'm not. Huge thank you to everybody for being involved today, for joining us online, for watching it live back if you watched it back after that, and to our guests, panelists, much appreciated. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers, guys.